Hello, Future Alan. Today's the 29th of August, and because the Dutch education system hates me, I start back at uni tomorrow, despite the fact that, I don't know, back in Ireland, had I stayed there for my university experience, I would get 4 months of summer holidays, but here I get less than two. So tomorrow, being Monday 30th of August, I head back to uni, so I'm going to have to start heading back, start doing like actual work, no more relaxing, which is a little bit disappointing considering how much I didn't actually get done over summer. There was a lot I wanted to get done with my websites and stuff, but hopefully being back here in the Netherlands, back at uni, I'll have motivation to like try and kick my life into not like a whole revolutionarily different thing, because big change is unsustainable in the long term, but like very slow minor steps. Like since coming back here, I've been eating less, which is good because I ate far too much over summer, but minor changes that should be, sustainable in that regard. But I don't really have much more to tell you right now. Today is quite a dull day. It's like going through the bureaucracy of it all. So instead, I shall leave you with stuff from yesterday, because my friend Killian, who was, I don't know how to describe it, but he was the friend of mine back in Dublin that I bonded with most over like film and stuff like that. No one else that I was friends with was interested in it in such the same way that he was. So that's what we spoke about most often. He was part of the reason that I started in D&D to such the extent that I did. But he is a good friend of mine, but we don't talk very much. But he was cycling around Europe, and he happened to be in Delft, so he stayed over the night. And today he's gone off to Germany because he's the most adventurous person that I know. But yes, last night he was conducting an interview for the documentary that he's filming while cycling around Europe, because again, he and I are both very film focused people. So I'm doing this project, he's doing his interviews, and so we both filmed each other during said interview, and well, this is that.
Yeah. If you've ideas, you could always sort of steer the conversation that direction.
Ideas?
Or just things you're like, I need this to be said.
My God, we set this up mere moments ago.
I know.
Yeah, so I don't have any ideas at all. So what would be an introductory question?
So some of the classics. The first one is, so I sort of explained the vague concept to you of I want to cycle around, ask a bunch of different people questions.
Yeah.
So if there was one question that you could add to my repertoire, like one thing that you'd love to hear people all over the world answer, what would it be? What would interest you to sort of hear diverse perspectives on?
Are you optimistic about the future? Because I would be interested to see how like different generations and different people who are raised in different environments work. Because like, I don't know about you, but half of our generation feels like the world is going to die in the next 25 years, but then is that our own echo chamber, or is that just like, is that the general sentiment? Are people getting more pessimistic about the future? That sort of thing is not something I know much about.
What if you're making a documentary, and I'd say this is easier for you to answer, it's like, what's the topic? What's the sort of like, let's say you were given, 40 grand funding, and they're like, go investigate anything you want, or talk about whatever topic you want. What's the sort of thing that you're like, I'd love to look into, I'd love to figure out?
I was actually working on a kind of like an explainer video, semiconductors. That is what I find super interesting. Like the fact that like quantum tunneling starts to fuck up how processors work once you get down to transistor sizes below 4 nanometers. And fucking TSMC have now announced that they have a 1 nanometer process. So we literally have electrons tunneling through walls where physics just fundamentally breaks down once you get to that level. But I want to have a documentary or a video or something that just explains everything about the modern semiconductor industry. Everything, like how the technology works, how the different like architectures work. Because like you can kind of understand how a computer works, and you can kind of understand how a transistor works. But once you try and connect those two concepts, it gets a bit confusing, to say the least. It's very cool, but it's entirely up my alley. So if I could just spend like a year documenting that, that's what I do. Just like having funding to just flick through papers and just teach myself that for no reason other than just understanding it.
It's actually, yeah, as you were saying that, I was like, that is so true. Like I've all, you see the little diagrams of like a circuit.
Yeah.
Like, I get that.
Yeah.
Like I get the ones and zeros stuff, and like I can see you can do some pretty cool stuff with this. Okay. You get some binary maths. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, computer. It's like there is a big gap there where I'm like, how, what? I could describe what RAM and the CPU does, but that gap is huge.
Like you've built a computer before.
Yeah.
Like you've put the processor in the motherboard. What the fuck is in that? How does that work? I don't know, and I want to know. Like I started writing a YouTube explainer video, but it's just such a complex industry. Like especially like the difference between like the reason I got into it is because the rumors of Apple switching over to ARM-based laptops, because like ARM is a RISC format, so reduced instruction set computing, whereas what Intel and AMD run on, they run on x86 architecture, which is a CISC architecture, so complex instruction set computing, where those are traditionally more powerful because like you have complex instructions, so you can run them all at once. Whereas now ARM is just getting so good. Like we even have RISC-V, which is an open source computing set architecture.
I'm gonna have to ask what that means.
Okay. Right. Okay. So when it comes to like desktop processors, there's only really two companies that do it, AMD and Intel, and they both use the same architecture. So like they build their chips basically using the same sort of instructions. So like you have the layouts and the logic gates and such, but that's locked into x86, which is the architecture. But that's private. That's intellectual property. No one else can do that. So that's why everything was Intel and AMD. Then you've got ARM, which uses an entirely different thing, where all of their logic gates are very, very small. Like they use very small things, and then they expect you to build architecture using lots and lots of these small ones. So reduced instruction set architecture rather than complex instruction set. So ARM, also a company, but they don't manufacture things. They just license this out to different things. So you've got like Qualcomm, Samsung, Apple now as well, and they just build their own chips as well. But it's still a company that licenses things out. But RISC-V, that's reduced instruction set computing, 5, they are open source. So it was like an open thing. So all of those architecture, you don't have to pay a license fee, but it's just completely out there. So you can develop your own thing, and if you need like a very specific chip to do a very specific task, so like let's say you want a smartwatch that doesn't do much, you don't want to have to use an ARM architecture thing where you have to basically have this wasted space on a processor, but like you have to buy the full package. So you just want this small bit, so you use the instruction set from RISC, so you don't have to pay a licensing fee, and you can build up this small single-use chip, because chips are in everything nowadays, and then just use that. So the fact that the industry is opening up in such a way is quite phenomenal. The fact that this is just something that exists rather than needing a whole company backing it, that I want to explore all of that.
Yeah.
What about yourself? What would your documentary be on?
Well, I think for me, and this is sort of what this is approximating, is I really like conversation. I like thinking about how to do conversation well. I like hearing how everyone does conversation and their story, and how that sort of brings in, and just building that connection between two people over just some random mouthy noises that we make to get a bit you know what I mean? Yeah. But it is just like it's just so mad to me, and I really enjoy it as a thing to do. So for me, it's always the ideal documentary is something where I'm like, as I'm doing it, the process itself is really enjoyable, and so.
Yeah, so like it's the fact that you want to be making it rather than what you want the end product to be.
Exactly, and sort of to me, the end product, I can't decide at the start, because part of the fun for me is like, I really like going into things and not having a clue. I like getting on my bike, getting on a boat, and then being like, I had no idea I would be in the Netherlands, you know. I thought I was going to Germany. That's where I'm meant to be going. You know, I've had to get a train now because I fucked it. But like,
Well, the
that's
Netherlands is an excellent country.
but that's so fun to me. It's like, you know, and then as things like slot into place, I'm so like, oh well, it had to be like this. You know, I wouldn't have got to see Alan. I wouldn't have got to, you know, all these other things that happened. So it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a big I like the process of things, and then
You just play it by ear.
yeah.
Of all people I've ever met, you seem to plan nothing. Like some people have like at least a framework of what they're gonna do. You just kind of go.
Yeah, I'd say what I do, and this is my, I plan so much to not have a plan. You know, so like I would go into college in second year, and I would have a pair of underwear and a toothbrush, because I wanted to be able to at any moment be like, yeah, let's go visit your family in Kerry. You know, if someone was offered me that, you know what I mean, or even just more realistically, I'll stay at yours tonight, or you know, I won't come home for 2 days, and just being able to like set yourself up. And then on this trip, you were like, oh, you've a lot of stuff that like you're not going to use most days. It's like, yeah, but then if I'm like, oh, there's a mountain there, I want to cycle that mountain.
Yeah.
I have I have water. I just need to buy a bag of rice and some tomato sauce, and I can survive, you know, for 3 days. And that to me is like the planning that I enjoy. Is planning that is unspecific in what it is, but it's being ready for